Off. Hello, my name is Brad Bodnerchuk, and welcome to the Half a Dozen Hospitality Podcast, where we discuss everything hospitality, from the food on the plate to the teams that make it all happen and the communities that drive this industry forward. On this show, we sit down and chat with exciting, inspiring, and creative minds that make up one of the most dynamic industries that there is. And today, we have the pleasure to be joined by none other than Micheal Varga. Welcome to the show, Micheal.
Thank you very much for having me.
My pleasure. So for those of you that don't know Micheal, Micheal is a father. He is a husband. He is a firefighter. He is a chopped champion. And he is probably the closest thing that I know to a celebrity chef. So I feel very honored that he took time to come and be on the show today and help us understand better kind of how he views the industry and where it's at today and where he sees it going. So, Micheal, I'll open up to you to give the listeners just a better idea of who you are, where you come from. But give us a quick Coles Notes version on how this all started, you in food.
Me and food, it goes back a ways, actually. You know, my dad was a really, really good cook, self-trained, kind of like myself. And I was watching him growing up in the kitchen. I would watch what he did. And I think that's where my inspiration came from, was there. I have, on my mom's side of the family, they draw in, from the Middle East. They're from Egypt. So I draw into a lot of sort of those flavors and that profile. And I get a lot of inspiration from my family, essentially. And that's how I view my cooking. And
that's great. It's interesting to hear someone, I'm going to say our age, talk about their inspiration being their father, because traditionally, even now, I mean, I think we're seeing the tides turn a bit in regards to kind of who's in the kitchen and who's cooking. But I know for myself, growing up, it was predominantly my mother in the kitchen. But for me, I also had my grandfather, so my mother's father, and he was always in the kitchen. So was that just a natural thing in your family for your dad to be the one that was cooking? And was he the one at the stove 7 nights a week, or did they kind of share the responsibilities of kind of looking after the family and cooking the meals?
No, totally. It was my dad 7 nights of the week doing it, and which is not to take anything away from my mom, because she can cook.
Right.
You know, my dad he's been passed away for about 10 years now, and no problem. So my mom cooks too, and you know, we'll go over to her place for dinner, and she's lights out as well. So I didn't get to see a ton of that growing up because my dad was in the kitchen, and I mean, the man could cook.
That's amazing. So if we can just open that up a little bit, what would he cook, and would he take a bit of what you were saying in regards to kind of that flair that your mother's heritage would have? Would he bring that into his cooking, or was it really focused on kind of what he knew and where he came from?
For him, it was mostly what he knew and where he came from. You know, he's Eastern European. He was from Hungary, and he had a lot of Cole's Notes for him is he left Hungary in '56 when there was the Soviet occupation. Wow. So he moved around Europe cooking, ended up in Bermuda becoming a personal chef for a number of years in his 20s. So he was picking up all these different cuisines along the way. And that, I think, sort of is what shaped him to when he finally landed in Vancouver and worked in random kitchens around the city.
Okay, so he actually worked in restaurants as well.
Yeah,
okay.
He did.
Excellent. And did that mean was he doing your I'll call it your traditional cook hours? Was he kind of home during the day and then gone at night, or how did that work?
I was a little bit too young to remember that sort of aspect of it. What I do remember, he was actually in construction at that point, so he had left the restaurant industry and was a very talented woodworker and stuff, and built furniture, and
wow.
So very talented with his hands and with his imagination and creativity. But as for the cooking aspect of it, I don't really remember those days. So I was a little bit too young.
Right. So if you were to, this is one of my favorite questions to ask anyone, but especially now that I have this podcast and this platform, I really like this question. But if you were to cook a 3-course meal for, let's say, the Trudeaus, and the meal had to be somewhat inspired or motivated by something that your father had done or would do, what would that meal look like? So three courses.
3 courses. That's
I'm kind of putting you on the spot.
yeah,
there.
no, hey, you know what? When you say 3 courses and what would I cook for the Trudeaus, it's not going to be. It's going to be what comes from me. It's
Right.
going to be something from my heritage, what's in my wheelhouse, what speaks to me, not necessarily what's going to be in this Michelin star
Right.
restaurant that I'm going to try to recreate. So I love taking aspects of my dad's side and I love taking aspects of my mom's side and meshing that together. So one dish right now for sure would be like a Moroccan spiced lamb.
Okay.
That would probably be the main with I do this beautiful Moroccan spiced lamb with an Egyptian crusted in an Egyptian dukkha,
Right.
with some beet hummus and also and some harissa and just some bold Middle Eastern Moroccan flavors. For my dad's side, I could even start it off with a little pasta course, which is it's very simple. Pasta carbonara, which was my absolute favorite dish that he made. Not anything spectacular, but he made it so well that if he was still alive, that would be the one. That's the one dish I would still want.
Right.
Like if I could have one dish from him,
Right.
I'd be like, Dad, come back, make me that carbonara. It's so lights out. And third course, you know what? I'm not a huge into the desserts, but you have to have some sort of closure.
Right.
I'm really getting into making ice cream
Okay.
and stuff right now, so it would have to be something, some type of ice cream.
Right.
Yeah, I wish I could elaborate a little bit more, but I
No.
get once I'm in the kitchen is when
Yeah.
I start to formulate my plans. And
It's so funny. I'm the exact same way. I really love to cook, and I look at what you do through your social media, and I look and I'm really impressed with not only how you attack your food, but also how you plate your food. And I think you're definitely on a different level than someone like myself. But what I think you and I have in common, just having you answer that question, is when it comes to the savory dishes, I'm less inclined and I'm less inspired by that. I don't know what that is or what the hesitation is. I think it's a bit out of fear, but also because from what I know of desserts, it is more of a science. Right? There's measurements and there's exact numbers that you have to hit. Whereas, and you can speak to this if you want to jump in here, but when you're cooking a dish like your Moroccan spiced lamb, there's a bit of improv that you can do and you can kind of play around a little bit. It's not as dependent on exact amounts of this or that. You're kind of adjusting as you go. Or at least I feel that's the way it is when it comes to creating dishes, and you're not necessarily as locked in. And maybe someone that is listening and they're a pastry chef can kind of expand my mind here. But I feel when it comes to desserts, you really do have to stay in the black and white. You can't ever go out to the gray at all. Do you find that with when you are challenged to come up with a dessert, for example?
I agree with you 100% about the hardest thing for me is when somebody asks me, hey, what's your recipe for this? What are your measurements for this? And if it's a dish like my lamb dish, it's different every time. I don't have anything written down, which I should do. That was actually one thing I wish I had, a whole bunch of stuff from my dad written down, but he had told me, yeah, he doesn't do that. He just does it from, his heart, from his head, just throw some things in. He would say, when it's done is when it tastes good.
Right.
And so that's the biggest thing for me is trying to write it down and get some set recipes, because like I said earlier, it's never exactly the same. And then for desserts, you're exactly right with that. I'm more inclined to just look in the fridge and say, you know what, I think this might go good with that. Let's give it a try. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
But it's more of the creativity aspect of it. With the desserts and baking, you've totally hit the nail on the head, because it is specific to baking and sorts where the science does become part of it. It definitely makes it a little more challenging.
Yeah, it's interesting. And again, I challenge any pastry chefs out there to kind of change maybe my mindset and Michael's mindset with that. But it's a pool that I haven't had the confidence to jump into fully. And I know Lindsay, my partner, she absolutely loves it because she loves that it's controlled environment. Whereas I don't like that. I like to be, you know what I mean, a little bit kind of off the cuff. And just like you, I love opening up my fridge and being challenged or inspired by what's in there. and I kind of like at least having the roots of what I want to do, but then allowing for that tree to look any different way at the end when it comes to the plate and the flavors. So that really resonated with me in regards to going from the heart and kind of what would just kind of happen naturally. But one thing I do think you should do is start writing stuff down.
I'm starting. I am starting, and
Okay.
I hate wasting food. So to go back and look in the fridge and see what there is, it's the same thing at the fire hall.
Right.
Someone will ask me the morning of, hey, what are you thinking about for lunch today? And I'll say, well, let me look in the fridge, because I absolutely hate throwing things out and wasting it. So if it's something I can reuse or integrate into a meal or do something completely different with it, then that's what I try to do first before we go and get a whole bunch of new ingredients.
Let's unpack the fire hall a bit, because that's how you and I came to know each other. We have a mutual friend, and I'm very intrigued, and I've always been intrigued, pardon me, by the fire hall meals. And I think even before I knew you and just before I knew Adam, our mutual friend, I had always heard about the fire hall and the meals, whether it's big pots of chili or hamburgers or whatever it is. And I kind of had assumed that most of those meals were pretty simplistic. But I see some of the stuff that you share on your social media, and it's far from it. So one, how valuable are you looked at as a team member in the fire hall, and how open are the guys and girls to trying something that might not be as simple as a big pot of chili?
First off, I'm going to say I don't think I have ever made a pot of chili in the fire hall, which seems ridiculous because it's almost synonymous. People think that fire hall food is
fire hall chili. I don't know why it just comes to my head.
Fire hall chili. I see fire hall chili cook-off competitions,
Exactly.
and I just think, you know what? I've never actually done that.
Maybe you should.
You know what's? It's amazing. It's almost like having a test kitchen, because you have these guinea pigs that are willing to try, whatever you're making, essentially. So I love being there. Everybody pitches in.
Right.
Everybody pitches in some cash, and then we go out shopping, and they let you know if they don't like it. So far so good.
Right.
And I kind of have free reign over what I'm going to make, and always have those guinea pigs waiting to try it out. So which is I'm quite fortunate.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but you also do on the side like private cooking as well, like events, correct?
Yeah.
Catering.
Yes, totally.
For lack of a better term.
Yeah, totally. I do catering, private dinners, parties, pop-up kitchens,
Right.
all sorts of things. I'm just essentially exploring this and just going down this path, and wherever it takes me, it takes me.
Back to that point you were saying about having the guinea pigs, and I know you use that kind of term in tongue in cheek, but it's not often that anyone in this industry that's a chef or a cook that has a focus group like that often. Do you know what I mean? So you can really use that to your benefit, to say you want to add something new to one of your menus, or you have an event coming up in a month and you want to see how it's received. You have that opportunity to do that, which is fantastic. I'm sure not a lot of people that do catering events or are caterers or private dinner hosts have that capability. So do you see yourself consciously taking advantage of that, or do you cook a meal for the hall and it just is an absolute rock star on a dish and you're like, I have to replicate this again for the party coming up in June or whatever it might be?
A little bit of both. I don't go super fancy in the fire halls because we don't generally have a budget that allows that.
Right.
We all pitch in a little bit of cash and buy our groceries and go from there. But I definitely do take to heart, what they think. So if there's something that goes over really, really well, maybe I think about, okay, I'm onto something. How can I maybe elevate this for a private dinner party, or take these flavors and put it into something that could be plated really nicely, rather than just, sort of the fire hall buffet where everybody goes and fixes their own plate sort of thing.
Right. And do you find through your time in the fire hall and through the meals that you cook there, you're seeing others, you're helping light a spark in others that maybe they haven't cooked before, or maybe it's a guy and his wife does all the cooking in the house and all of a sudden he's really intrigued by how you seared the tuna? Or are you finding that you're not only providing food for these guys, and obviously you're doing it as a team, but you're also inspiring people to maybe get in the kitchen a little more and maybe play with some different flavors that they wouldn't have thought of?
I hope so. I got to start by saying that there are so many lights out cooks that work in the fire department, and I'm lucky to be on a crew with a few of them and have worked with a lot of them in the past. So a lot of it is collaboration. A lot of it is like, hey, what do you think about putting this and this together, and then getting feedback, and just and it's exciting. I mean, in the fire department, regardless of what we go to in a day, like there's fires, there's medical calls, there's overdoses, there's car accidents, and we see that on a daily. But we also have a meal together, like a family meal together on the daily as well, which is quite unique for a job, and quite amazing that we get to do that together and reset and talk about the day. And it's almost like a little piece of mindfulness to be able to do that together, to cook together, to eat together, to be like our second family. And so going back to the inspiring, and I think so. I'm getting a lot of messages and a lot of through my Instagram and Facebook of people that are like, hey, I'm thinking about making this and this. What do you think? Or I just had one this morning of a buddy of mine who said, hey, the fire chief's coming over for lunch tomorrow. What do you think we should make? I need a rock star meal.
Amazing.
And I'm just a guy that likes to cook.
Right.
Like, I don't necessarily look at myself like that. I just love to cook. And if somebody likes what I do, if it inspires somebody, then I'm all for it. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. And like I said, from what I've seen, my exposure to your food, I haven't had a chance of eating any of your food yet, but just from looking at it through social media, it looks fantastic. Your plating's great. And I think the flavors that you play with is also unique in a certain way, and pushing people a little bit to try some new things. One thing that you just mentioned that I think is something we should speak on quickly is, and I believe in it wholeheartedly, is food's ability to bring people together. And when I lived overseas, I lived in London, England for 2 years, and something that's very common over there was the Sunday dinners. And Sunday dinners for them is someone opens up their house and it's a roast, generally chicken or beef, and it's just an opportunity for everyone to come together as their weekend winds down and as their week traditionally would begin. And I just found that from the food and sitting down and using the term breaking bread, it's just an amazing way to bond with people. And I don't know what it is, and maybe you can shine some light on that, or at least offer an opinion. But when you share a meal with someone, it's almost like doing a workout with someone. It's almost like the barriers are dropped. And I know you guys are all on the same level-ish at the hall. You are at the root all firefighters. But what is it about food that really does bring us all together, in your opinion?
There are no boundaries with food. There's no cliche. It's blind, right? It's everybody shares that in common, right? So we're at the fire hall, and the one thing that we all have in common is our job, but also we want to sit down and we want to have a great meal and we want to interact with each other. So it really brings people together.
Right.
I'm currently on MasterChef Canada, and the one thing I can say about that is in the top 12 contestants, characters, actors on the show, which I'm part of at the moment, you look around and see the diversity there. There are white people, there are black people, there are Asian people, there are gay people, there are people of different religions. And you look at those 12 people, and the one thing that we absolutely all have in common is food.
Right.
And we could sit there and chat with each other behind the scenes and in the holding rooms and stuff, and we would sit there and talk about our love for food. And nothing mattered. Like, it doesn't matter if you're gay or straight or whatever, or if you're black or white, or if you're Jew or Muslim. Like, none of that matters, because we all just sat there and talked about food and our love for it.
Yeah.
And it's this passion, and it just brings people together. And that was one thing that I definitely brought back from the show, was looking at this sort of petri dish of people on this year. And that's like a small sample of what Canada is and what Canada should be like.
Totally.
And the one thing in common is food.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I don't know if it is if it comes down to our just biological need to eat food, right? We have to consume it for energy, to survive, to live, or what it is. But I think I hadn't heard food is blind before, but I think that's an awesome way to describe it. And it might sound whimsical a bit, but I completely buy into that. It really does. it breaks down all the boundaries, and it's just you and me, or us and 10 people sitting down and enjoying food together. I think there's something very special about that. And I think, to be honest, it's something that I don't think we do enough. And talking, if we can quickly talk about the current food scene in say Vancouver in particular, where we call home, looking at the restaurants, I am seeing a bit of a trend changing in even the way rooms are set up. Meaning, whereas before everyone would kind of, say you and I were going out for lunch, we would kind of be in our silo at our two top table, right? But now you're seeing those more like long communal tables. And I love that. I love that we're kind of stepping outside of that bubble a bit, of our personal bubbles, and allowing for other people to sit next to us and get close and maybe talk a bit about what we're eating, or talk a bit about the space that we're in, and what it means to us and how it affects us. So do you see a trend in where food is going and where restaurant design is going that is recognizing the benefits of more communal style dining and eating? I mean, looking at like share plates are really popular. So do you think that is the restaurateurs and the entrepreneurs just recognizing this is an opportunity for us to create change in this space? Like, where do you think that comes from?
I definitely think that is trending right now, is to have that communal family style mentality at these restaurants. I mean, when I do my catering events and the small dinner parties and stuff, I love to be able to do these fancy plated meals. But what I really, really enjoy are doing elevated versions of family style plates where people you can say, hey, Brad, did you try that risotto? Here, let me pass it over to you. It's awesome. Well, guess what? Now you guys are interacting and you're talking about the food, and we're not necessarily on our phones,
right,
taking pictures of what's going on and in our own little world at the table. Right now we're doing it as one, and I definitely think that there are benefits to that too. And talking about London, or back there, the family dinners on the Sundays, I used to do that with my sister, and I would go to my dad's and we would do Sunday dinner there.
Amazing.
But I just don't hear about that often anymore. It's quick, eating in front of the TV and getting it in and getting it out, rather than it being a social event. And I think that's actually very North American, to have your meal quick and eat it in and out. So I love that a lot of the restaurants and the scene are going that way, of the communal tables, and making it more of an event, of a place to reset, chill out, and interact with people. Because that's what food is. It's you need it, but I love to eat and talk about it and talk with people around me. So I think it's fantastic that it's going that way.
Yeah, I think it is. It's slowly happening. And actually, going back to London, my time there, I saw a lot of that. I saw a lot of spaces that were really kind of curated around being more communal. So it's nice to see restaurants now doing that. But even going back to talking about, like you're talking about your like family style plates that you do, a lot of restaurants right now are offering that as well, right? The first thing that the server or the waitress or waiter will tell you is, what we do here is a little more like we bring out dishes as they come, and it's kind of a share plate. And it, like you said, it's so interactive. Like, you try a bite, I try a bite, we talk about it, we try another bite, we talk about it again. What do we like? What do we not like? I think that's what food has been before you and I were even here. But I think, to your point as well, we're kind of getting away from that a bit, where everything is so fast paced and they want it now. So how, this is a loaded question, and maybe you have an answer for it, maybe you don't, but how can you, through your outreach that you have, or through your touch points that you have, whether it's at the fire hall or whether it's in the home or whether it's at private events, how can you affect that change, and how can you kind of choreograph that to happen seemingly organically, but really you're kind of making it happen, either whether it's the way the room's set up or the dishes that you send out? So how can you be a catalyst to that becoming the way people dine through what you do?
I can just do what I do. Like I can take care of myself and my family, and then the fire hall, and start it from there. Right. When I do these private dinners, I can offer up a sort of a family style meal and hand it out like that. But it really has to start with the individual. Right. Especially the North American mentality, where we talked about how it's super fast paced, and you just got to get it in you, get the food in you, and get back out to work or whatever you got to do. It's just, think it's in the individual to really realize that it is so beneficial to have that time to reset, eat, and have that contact, have that human contact with your friends and your family. So I can do it by offering those types of menus. I can do it by doing it at the fire hall, making sure that my family, that we sit down and put the iPads down for a half an hour while I find out what my son did at school that day.
Right.
And hopefully from there it just kind of spreads. I'm just take care of my little tiny corner of the world and just move outward.
Yeah, I like that. One thing that I am seeing, kind of the antithesis of that, really expand and be successful in the city, is what they call QSR model. I don't know if you know that terminology. So quick service restaurant. So for me, the kind of the OGs of the QSR would be like a Subway, where you walk in, you place your order, then you just kind of pass to the next guy. Here's your sandwich. Here's your money. Sorry, this is what the bill is. Give us your money, and then you're gone, kind of thing. So I'm seeing businesses like Tractor, Railtown Cafe, just to name a couple, that are really, they're offering what I think is fantastic food, but you're missing that touch point. But they're busy every single day because the majority of people either don't want to make time for it or don't, quote unquote, have the time for it. So do you think that as much as we see, as much as we see restaurants putting in communal tables, and as much as we see private chefs coordinating menus that have share plates, do you think at the end of the day, the almighty dollar of I can do 80 covers in an hour as opposed to 20 covers an hour, if I have a QSR model versus a come in, sit down, relax, let me take care of you and make you feel like you're in my home? Is there a bit of well, this is a little bit sexier because my business is going to grow? Or is this a better long game? What do you think about that?
The almighty dollar, like you said, unfortunately, that's sort of what runs everything. When I do my dinners, when I do my events, I'm not in the forefront super concerned with what I'm going to make off of it or the margins. I just want to put out some really quality stuff and have a connection with my clients, and have the clients connect while they're having it. And you look at that whole European model, like having a long lunch, maybe a little bit of a siesta.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way it should be. I had lunch at Tractor the other day with my wife, and it was fantastic. Like, there's nothing wrong with it, but you're absolutely right. You're moving out that sort of conveyor belt, and you're in and out. I think we were in there for about 15 minutes tops.
Right.
So right now the dollar runs everything, unfortunately. Right. People have to put food on their table, right?
Yeah,
so getting these people their food quickly puts food on their table in turn.
Yeah.
But going back to my thoughts on it, it's just you just got to start with yourself and choose to want to do that, choose to want to make it a priority, choose to want to have that friends and family and that reset time and that connection time. So until the masses decide that this is something that hey, I want this. I don't want a 15-minute lunch break. I want an hour lunch break, and to appreciate the time I have and to appreciate what's around me, then that QSR model is gonna rule.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could put a really long tail on that kite and talk about just the economics of it all and the industry, but it would be nice to see us as the masses start voting with our dollars more, and maybe supporting those restaurants that are catering to that a little bit of a slower process. But hey, I'm guilty of it myself. At times I'm in a crunch, time crunch, part of me, and I have to get food in quickly, and I want it to be of high quality and healthy. And a lot of those restaurants that we just named, that's what they're offering, right? And they're offering healthy, quick, well-sourced food. So it's a challenge. It definitely is a challenge.
Sure, because that's before it used to be anything you got quick was greasy or sitting under a heat lamp or deep fried, and now you have these models come out like Tractor, which you have an abundance of these different beautiful looking salads.
Right.
And they're just using that same model to get you in and out, but now the food is healthy and it's better for you, and you feel better after having it. So
right. And just so we're clear, this is not sponsored by Tractor. No, but you know what? They do a great job, and I will say, admittedly, right here, I really enjoy their food. It's great, and I would go back there every day if I could afford to.
It's just I was there last week, and that was the first time I was there. So
no, it's great,
yeah.
and it's exactly what I was talking about. It fits into exactly what I was saying in regards to. And a good friend of mine just opened up the exact same model, and he owns 3 traditional restaurants, and he owns this QSR. And he said, if I'm going to open up anything else, it's going to be a QSR because of the cost to operate it. He doesn't need as many staff on. Like, all of these things add up, and I get it. At the end of the day, he has a family to feed, and he has a team to employ. So he has to think about what's best for his people and his business and himself. So by no means am I saying there's an issue with that model, but it just definitely challenges what you and I were speaking to earlier about slowing down a bit and breaking bread and taking time. Perhaps there's just a time and a place for that.
You know what? There might not be time every single day for that, right? So that's why you get in and get out and get these meals in you, because you got to get back to work or you got to get to where you're going. But I think it is really important to make sure that you do take that time to break your bread and to just reconnect with your friends and family. So, you know, if it's once a week, if it's twice a week, you got to make that conscious effort to actually get that done.
And maybe it is something that is, like I was mentioning in London, it's a once a week thing, right? It's every Sunday. You just consciously take that time to set aside, and you get together with people that you maybe didn't hold space for during the week, and that is your time to have them into your home, or vice versa, and you sit down and relax and have a killer meal. Speaking about family, I know that's very important to you. I see on your Instagram stories, which I absolutely love, your daughter, I believe, is from my interpretation, is just kind of like dipping her toe into the water of cooking, and it seems like she's absolutely loving it. So what's that like for you to teach her, and where do you see that going, and how do you see that growing, and are you pushing her at all, or just this is happening organically?
So I have a daughter and a son,
right.
And my daughter absolutely loves getting in the kitchen with me, and I didn't push her towards it at all. She pushes the stool up to the stove, and she's like, "Dad, I want to do this. Dad, can I help you?" And you know, absolutely, I love nurturing it, and I love her in the kitchen with me. It's fun, and yeah, it makes some great Instagram videos too, for sure. It makes some great Insta stories.
Yeah.
Which is funny. My daughter loves to help me cook, but doesn't like to eat it. My son likes to watch us cook, but he will try anything and everything. So a couple weeks ago, I had a couple friends over, and we had this big test kitchen day at my place. You know, had some wine, had some beer. We went down to the grocery store and just picked up a ton of ingredients, whatever spoke to us that day, whatever was fresh and seasonal. And we had some duck, we had some lamb, we had scallops, we had abalone. We went full out. My kitchen looked like a bomb went off in there.
A very expensive bomb.
Yeah, exactly. But at the end of it, my son was eating absolutely everything. He was trying everything. He ate the duck. He ate the lamb. He's
Amazing.
He's 7 years old, and he will try it all. And he gives us the gladiator thumbs up, thumbs down motion,
right?
And absolutely loved it. So I've got like my sous chef, and I've got my taste tester built in. So it's fun. I love being in that's our home base in the house, is the kitchen.
Right.
We have this big island where the kids can sit around and help me cook or help me prep or you know, do their homework and watch, and then ultimately taste the food after.
Amazing. So I know that your demands, I'm assuming your demands of being a firefighter, your schedule can be a little bit unpredictable at times. So certain days you're home, certain nights you're home. So walk us through, if you were home, say 3 nights in a week or 4 nights in a week, what is a successful dinner on those nights? What are you cooking up, and what are the kids really receptive to?
Like I said earlier, my son is receptive to almost anything.
Right.
You know, I think last night I made, I have a friend who's of West Indian descent, and he taught me how to make this authentic West Indian curry, which is just lights out. And last night, my son, Ollie, crushed it. Like, I made a bunch, and he was like, "Is that chicken?" I said, "Yeah, it's chicken." He's like, "Can I try some?" And I said, "Absolutely." Yeah. So I fix him a little bowl, and he gives me the gladiator thumbs up. And so it's essentially, I look in the fridge, see what we have, and go from there. A really successful meal is probably me cooking about 3 different meals. One for my wife and I, one for my daughter, and one for my son. But on that off chance where the stars are aligned and we'll all eat the same dish, I mean, that's amazing when that happens. But
what would that dish be then? Or does it depend on the day and how people are feeling? And
You know what? Anything. So we make our own pizza doughs and stuff like that. So sometimes we'll do like big family pizzas and stuff like that.
Always a hit.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And then it's one of those things where I like to know where my dough comes from and like, you know, all the ingredients. So we like to make our own dough, which my daughter absolutely loves helping me with. The kitchen looks like a complete mess after it's done, but it's
fun, right?
Yeah, it's fun. It's totally worth it, right? And you get that bonding time with your family.
That's amazing. I think that's what food should be. Again, I think we touched on it maybe in just different words that we've used, but at the end of the day, like this should all be fun. Food you do at home, food that you consume outside in the community. It should be fun and it should be enjoyable. Speaking about sourcing ingredients, where do you like to shop? Where do you see yourself going mostly? And if you wanted to find something a little bit outside of the box, whether it's a unique protein or a unique spice, like where does one like yourself go?
So I live in Port Moody. I'm lucky enough it still feels kind of small townish and there's a lot of independent. There's a few butchers. There's a seafood guy. There's some small places to get produce, and so not necessarily like the big box grocery stores. If I want to do a one-stop shop, I'll usually end up going to Thrifties. I find their quality is pretty good, and they have a large array of stuff in the butcher's counter, the seafood counter. But there's a little butcher in Port Moody and Newport Village is great. They have all sorts of different types of proteins. Nice. You know, the regular, the usual suspects, and then, you know, the lamb and the bison, and there's all sorts of stuff in there. There's a seafood guy there as well in Newport Village, which is awesome, and they always have fresh seafood and great stuff. And there's a little Italian place with specialty ingredients, you know, the olive oils and that sort of stuff. So I like to sort of shop in that area and support the local businesses, the small businesses, for sure.
So if you were going back to your I'll call it your side project with your catering, your private dinners that you do. So if you were curating a menu, are you, let's say it's for 50 to 75 people, are you doing your best to shop at those local places, or are you helping your client keep prices down and shop maybe more thrifty or hitting up a Costco, or are you so adamant on it has to be this piece of lamb from this butcher, or do you allow some flex with that?
No, there's definitely flexibility. I mean, there has to be. I can't lose money on the dinners I do. I try to, as much as I can, source from the small businesses and the local businesses. But once you're getting into those, you know, 80, 90, 100 people, then yeah, absolutely. You know, I'll have to hit up a Costco for a few things, or the Thrifties for a few things. It's just not. It doesn't make sense economically to source everything at these other places. Unfortunately, I wish I could use those for absolutely everything. So the smaller events, the private dinners, the 10 to 15, 16 people, absolutely, I'll go to those and I'll hand pick everything myself. But once it starts to get into the higher numbers, you have to learn to adapt for sure.
So just for everyone that's tuning in, listening, and watching, give us an idea of how you found yourself stepping into this role of private dinners and offering that as something that you do outside of the fire hall.
It's strange, you know. It just happened organically. I'm just a guy that loves to cook, and that's sort of become my hunting, my golf, my fishing. You know, as a lot of the other firefighters like to do. Cooking is my passion. It's what I like to do on the side. And with our fire department, we actually do this. It's called a fire in your kitchen, and they're these charity dinners that we do for people that bid on them. Firefighters go to your house, we make them a meal, and then all the money goes to charity, and it actually raises quite a bit of money. So I've been doing these dinners. From that, I've been having clients hiring me to do other parties. Amazing. And then Chopped Canada came along, and then after that aired, there seemed to be a little more. I was getting more messages and more, hey, so did you ever think about doing this or think about, you know, these events? And it's just been really happening organically. That's cool. And now since MasterChef Canada is on, I've been getting even more of that. So it's not necessarily something I set out to do, but I love doing it. Right. And I'm starting to get the calls and the requests to do it. So
Do you see this at some point kind of morphing into something more serious for yourself, whether it's a brick and mortar, or whether it's a traveling kind of just that, the private dinners and the catering, or is this just going to be something that for now or for the foreseeable future is just kind of on the side, or will it ever be kind of your thing?
I don't see this moving into a brick and mortar type of thing. Talking about the family, that's number one in my life. Like I have my job, which is firefighting, and then my family is my number one priority. So to start a new business venture where you have this restaurant with an overhead and staff, and now it's not just about cooking. I'm the cooking person. Like I'm not the spreadsheets and computers and planning. I just like to get in the kitchen and cook. So will it go there? I doubt it. I'm super happy doing these private dinners. But what I really want to do is showcase what these firefighters are doing, because the fire hall food is just moving to next level. It's gone from massive plates of just
Spaghetti
yeah,
meatballs.
there you go, spaghetti and meatballs of the cheapest quality you can get, to some like really elevated food where you look at it and you go, wow, you're eating this in a fire hall. So I have a few ideas with showcasing that, and that's something that I definitely like to explore, to maybe be a catalyst to sharing what fire halls are doing, like the culture, the stories. There seems to be a little bit of a mystique story about the fire department and what we do. So maybe share stories of the calls we go to, stuff we see, like our culture, and then the food and what brings us together. So I have a few ideas with that. So we'll see what happens.
I see an imminent cookbook in your future.
Well, I'm gonna have to start writing things down then, for sure.
Exactly. No, I think it's great. I think the fact that you have you have that resource of having the focus group to work with, and other guys and girls in the hall that are passionate about food as well, and you guys can come together on shift and share that. I think it's really special. And the fact that it's now manifested into this charitable cause, and it's also just so in line with your passions is amazing. So why change it, right?
Totally.
And if an opportunity comes your way, potentially jump on it. Maybe you don't. And I know this episode won't actually air until June, but you are doing pop-up dinners with some other MasterChef, what do we call them? Stars, chefs, contestants?
Sure, contestant chefs.
Okay, cool.
Sure.
How is that relationship? Is that something that you just kind of you go to the show and you meet these men and women and you just kind of connect with a certain group of people, or is it just because this guy and this girl are both in Vancouver, so it just kind of makes sense for us to do something?
No, I think when I alluded to earlier about it being this small sample size of what Canada should be, like the 12 people that were on there, and there were more guys and girls that were on previous as well. Right. So I could say, the 21 of us for sure. But we just all had that passion, that same thing in common. I don't know that I would have met Eugene and Kagan outside of this TV show. Like I don't know, we're completely different industries, completely different walks of life, like live in different areas of the city. But meeting them, it was just instant connection. And we get along really well, and we complement each other really well. And it's the show was definitely a wild ride, and so is this, doing dinners with these guys. It's unbelievable. That's
awesome. And I know I don't want to keep you for too long, but I have a few more questions for you. First and foremost, what I've developed on the show and what we call is the half a dozen must-have or must-haves. So I didn't give you any prompting for this, so completely improv here. Sure. But whether it is a kitchen utensil, whether it is a meal you've had, whether it is a trip you've taken, whether it's a book you read, what is your one half a dozen must-have, whether it's in the kitchen, out in the community, whatever it is, to share with the listeners and the viewers today?
The one must-have that pops in my head right away is a mortar and pestle that used to be my nana's from Egypt that found its way into my kitchen. Amazing. So that I will sit there and I will grind up all my spice blends and just everything in that. It's this beautiful brass piece that it just weighs a ton. So,
Wow.
but it's, you know what, it's my heritage. What brings me back to my family and the reason why I'm cooking and why I'm teaching my daughter and son to cook. And so for me, it's a tool that I use, but it's also a symbol of why I do it.
Amazing. So would that be something we find on your countertop, or is that kind of hidden away and gets pulled out whenever you need it?
No, that's front and center.
Yeah.
That is front and center.
I don't think I've seen a brass pestle and mortar before.
Oh yeah, it's old school.
Must
It
be
is-
heavy duty.
It is extremely heavy. Yeah.
Amazing. Last thing you prepared in that?
A couple days ago, I make my own ras al hanout, which is a Moroccan spice rub. I think it literally means like head of the shop or top shelf. So it's
Okay.
all the best ingredients. And I've been working on this recipe for a while, and I think now I have about 18 or 19 different spices in mine, including rose petals. And,
Oh wow.
yeah. So
Stepping out.
oh yeah. So it's quite elaborate, and I just made that a few days ago actually.
For those people that are at home, and just to get you used to quote unquote writing things down, give us the kind of the roots of what a solid ras al hanout would be. So you've got, I'm assuming, sesame seeds first.
So actually, I have cinnamon, cumin, some paprika, some
Okay.
nutmeg, a little bit of saffron,
Oh wow.
good salt. Yeah, none of the table salt.
Right.
Get some good kosher salt or something good for that.
Right.
I throw a little bit of rosemary into mine,
Oh wow.
some turmeric, some ginger, and a whole whack of other things.
So I wonder if I was just thinking of maybe a different style of ras al hanout, but I always thought it started with sesame seeds, but I could just
Well,
be
that's
completely.
that's the thing is, not all of them are the same.
Oh okay.
Yeah, there's different interpretations of them,
Right.
for sure.
Amazing. And then the last one I have for you before you go is the half a dozen haven't yet. So one thing that you haven't done yet, whether it's a meal that you've been meaning to go out for, a trip you've been meaning to take, a product you haven't tried yet, or a restaurant in town. So the half a dozen haven't yet. What's one of your haven't yets?
Wow, that could be a long list for sure. But my wife was lucky enough to travel through Thailand, and I absolutely love South Asian food and Thai food. So I would love to get there one day and just sample some of the beautiful flavors that they have.
Yeah, it is amazing. That actually, I just had a delicious meal with Lindsay a few weeks ago at, I think it's Kin Kao is how you would pronounce it, Kinkao on Commercial Drive.
Okay.
Actually, not far from where you and I first met at the cafe there, almost
Oh.
like kind of kitty corner there a bit, kind of Venables area. Anyway, fantastic Thai food. I'm a big Indian curry guy. I love my Indian. But Thai curry, again, like you said, just the flavors and the freshness of it is just out of this world. So if you're ever over on Commercial, look them up.
I'll get you that curry recipe too that I got
Yeah,
from my friend
that
Jonathan.
sounds amazing.
Yeah, my friend Jonathan back in Winnipeg gave me this curry recipe, and I think when he made it for me once, actually he was one of the top 12 on MasterChef.
Oh, amazing.
Him and I were roommates for a little while, and he just showed me how to make this curry, and I think I probably ate about almost the whole pot of it. It was so delicious.
I love curries. They're dangerous.
Oh.
They're so dangerous. Well, you know what? I'm going to hold you to it again. I'm going to get you to write that down for me. Send it to me either email or text or over Instagram, and then we'll put it in the show notes so that our listeners, if they want to try it at home, they can try it out. Jonathan's West Indian curry.
Yes, it's dynamite, but now I'm going to have to figure out how much of everything I put in it.
Exactly.
It's not just like
The cookbook begins.
yeah, a punch of this, a pinch of that.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. So lastly, before we let you go, where can our viewers find you, and what are you doing now? What can we help support Micheal Varga and his path along this thing called food?
So my social media handles right now are, you can follow me on my Instagram page and kind of see what I'm up to, and it's at thecup14, as in like a drinking cup.
Right.
My Twitter handle is at michaelvarga21.
Okay.
Other than that, it's just I'm either at home in the kitchen with my family, or out in the trails with my daughter, or I'm doing some hikes, or I'm at work at the firehall in Vancouver.
Amazing.
So I'm just, it's just day by day.
That's awesome. Well, if you have an opportunity to try some of Michael's food, whether it's through a charity event or whether it's through a private dinner that he's doing, I highly recommend it because the guy has some serious talent. And if you haven't picked up on it, he's got some serious passion that comes from deep within him from his father and his mother. So I appreciate your time, your passion, and what you do for food. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and we look forward to seeing you over the next few months just expand and keep growing. Thank you, Michael, so much.
Thank you so much. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks, buddy.
Thank you.
Cheers. Awesome. You did great, dude.
Thank you.
That was fun.